Hey, this is Trevor from Pelican. We're thrilled to be playing Doom City Festival this February. Hope to see you there.
Hola, bienvenidos a Doom and Stone Latinoamérica. Mi nombre es Román Tamayo y tengo el privilegio de platicar el día de hoy con Trevor de Pelican como parte de los shows que vamos a tener, de las entrevistas previas al Doom City. Así que pues vamos a platicar un poco sobre la carrera de Pelican y también añadir un poco sobre Gear. Hello, Trevor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So in this show, we love to hear a little bit about the background of our guest, and also we always ask some different questions, like focus on gear, focus on personal thoughts, beliefs, the life in general, and of course, the history of the project. So the first question and the obvious question is if you can tell us the first band or artist that truly impact you as a kid or someone who influenced you to pick up an instrument.
Um, okay, well, I think that's very two-part. Um, I'm the youngest of three brothers, and my older brothers were both very into music, and had very different music tastes from one another. And to this day, all three of us are on very different journeys musically, with some overlap, of course. The first time I remember music hitting me on a deeper level was when my older brother Alan got the New Order Bizarre Love Triangle 12-inch. There was something about um there's a such a yearning quality to the melodies of that song, and I know that there's lyrics, but the lyrics are so abstract that you can really pull any kind of meaning out of them, and the melodies being so evocative in that way, it just really activated something in me, and I couldn't stop spinning it. I think I listened to it more than he did. I just would play it, the extended remix, and then as soon as it would finish, I'd just bring the needle back to the beginning of the record again and again and again. So I think that was a song that was really, really, really pivotal for me in discovering music and how it can tap into a deeper part of myself. And in terms of picking up a guitar, I I remember making many attempts at trying to learn guitar, and I don't remember what would have been driving it when I was in my early teens. But when I got to high school and I discovered punk rock, everything sort of started gelling in a real way. And I was getting into bands like Ramones and Screeching Weasel. And there was something about um, how much not easier it was to play those songs, but easier to figure out what it was that the guitarists were doing. So that even though my emulations of them didn't sound good, at least I knew that I was on the right path towards something. And that was really liberating in a sense. And then I kind of started my own journey from there.
That's really nice. So, do you remember how you get your first guitar?
Yeah, there was a guitar store like 2 blocks from my house growing up. And I remember I bought my first guitar was a Fender Squire 2. It was like a very cheap Stratocaster knockoff. And yeah, I don't know. I saved up the money to buy it and just wouldn't stop playing it.
Do you still have it?
No, that one's gone.
Do you remember your first band and the first time that you played in front of people?
Yeah, my first band that played in front of people was called the Mighty Chuck. First we were called Flynap after a chemical agent that was used in science class to put flies to sleep so you could dissect them. But then we changed our name to the Mighty Chuck. I'm not really sure why. That I don't remember. But our first show was actually it was a basement party at this friend of mine's house, Roy Burgess. His basement was legendary for a while. There were so many like punk shows and stuff down there, and that show was actually the last show by this band from our hometown called Anger House. They were a really pivotal hardcore band in the Chicago suburban community. And Everlast played, Los Crudos played. So it was like a pretty raging show.
Wow.
Pretty wild that we got to play such a cool show for our first time playing.
I'm curious, well, you get involved in the punk scene, and the punk scene is very close to this stoner doom scene, specifically from the 90s when born. But in your
Mhm.
case, how you get involved in all these kind of sounds? We call it in these days post-metal, post-rock, doom, stoner, but probably in these days they don't have the label. So how you get involved in all these kind of sounds?
Um, well, I had a interest in metal early on. And I think I was actually listening to metal a little bit before I got into punk. So my older brother Alan had Iron Maiden Number of the Beast, which I liked because it just felt so there was something that felt almost forbidden about it, you know? And then in junior high school, again, when I was getting more into music, a friend of mine got into Metallica, and we used to listen to Injustice for All a lot. And I got Kill 'Em All, I remember. So I kind of had like a vocabulary for heavy sounds. Um, but I don't think that I got more deeply invested in it until my punk journey crossed over into hardcore. um there were a few years where I was straight edge, and I was getting really into like straight edge hardcore bands like Earth Crisis. I was really into this band Groundwork from Arizona. And so heaviness sort of, that was sort of my path into like being more interested in like what's the architecture behind what makes a song heavy, you know. um so yeah, I don't know. I agree with you that it was kind of a slippery slope from hardcore into stoner rock and doom and all of that stuff, especially like in the late 90s, when bands like Sleep and I Hate God were popping up. They were definitely, they had their foundations in punk. And so it was sort of like a hop, skip, and a jump from the one to the next.
And I'm curious how you decide to start the band Pelican and develop this sound. It's very unique, and probably in these days it was not common. I mean, you're one of the main bands who start all these movement sounds. I mean, these days you have several bands around the world, and we call it post metal, post rock, or whatever. But probably these days it was something new. So how you develop the sound and how you meet each other, how start the project.
Well, Laurent and I were in many bands going back to when he first came to the States. He came to the States to go to college, to go to university at Northwestern in Evanston, which was my hometown. And we just sort of met each other going to shows and stuff like that. um, and so we have a pop punk band, we had a hardcore band, we had like a screamo band, we had like all any number of bands together before we stumbled onto Tusk, which was like a pretty serious prog grindcore band that we did for a few years and made a few records. Um, Laurent, when he moved to the States, was primarily a guitar player. For whatever reason, we didn't. Tusk was theoretically started with me and Larry, and then Laurent kind of begged his way into the band because he was like, "How could you do another band without me?" So, but we didn't have a bass player, so he was like, "I'll just play bass," and that was really fun. That was a really fun. I think it was fun for him to play a different instrument for a while, and it was fun for all of us to like make this really hectic, crazy music. Um, but after a while, he was really itching to play guitar again, and there wasn't really space for it in the way Tusk operated. So he started writing songs, and then he uh, showed some of them to Larry, and they kind of started their own band. And then it was the inverse. I sort of begged my way into Pelican, which is what that turned into. Uh, I think at that time, like we were all listening to a lot of Goatsnake and Godflesh, and I think it, in a sense, like the band was really at the very beginning was almost an homage to those influences. And it wasn't until after our demo, we wrote 3 songs and threw those away, and then the next 4 songs became our demo, and then we started playing shows. And then the next batch of songs after that is when we sort of like hit upon what our actual our own musical identity was.
Do you remember how you record the demo and the early shows of the band? Probably you play more with punk bands, I guess.
I mean, we played with all kinds of bands, but yeah, we definitely played like DIY spaces a lot. Many of our early shows were at the Fireside Bowl, which was a bowling alley that did all ages shows in the city. And that was booked by Brian Peterson, who was like a very big figure in the punk community at that time. But yeah, we played with all kinds of bands, definitely hardcore bands. I think though our first show was opening for High on Fire on their first US tour. And it was really just that Brian had heard that we had some sort of stoner rock side project. And he was like, you know, he had booked so many Tusk shows at that point, and he was like, you guys want to jump on this? I bet whatever you're doing, it would be an appropriate fit for it. We were all huge Sleep fans. So when High on Fire started, we were like, that was our shit right from the start. So that was exciting. And we were bad, but you know, it was fun. So
That's really amazing. And well, I'm curious about the period of time that you get involved with Hydrahead Records. I know if you can tell us a little bit about all this movement because Hydrahead Records and that label, that movement changed everything for the modern band. So you are part of that movement in the early 2000s, I guess. And so yeah, and if you can tell us a little bit about this journey with Hydrahead Records.
yeah, it's still mysterious to me how that happened because it was such an incredible synergy. Like Hydra had already figured so huge in all of our lives and the musical influences that touched us. We were all really, really big fans of Botch, of Cave In, of Coalesce, all these bands that were affiliated with the label in one way or another. So uh, we were into ISIS when they first formed, and again, uh, they were coming through town, and Brian Peterson offered to put us on the show. I think that was when they were touring with the Swiss band Canut, who went on to be longtime friends of ours. And that was our third show. Uh, we were better than at the High on Fire show, but we were still not a very good band. But what was flattering was that all of the members of ISIS watched our entire set, and you know, they came up to us afterwards and said it was really refreshing to play with a band that felt like I don't I wouldn't remember how they phrased it, but they felt some sort of kinship with what we were doing. Um, and Aaron Turner mentioned when we recorded something to please send it to him. Much later, maybe not too much later, maybe like half a year later, we recorded our demo. We ended up self-releasing it. We made 500 copies of it and sold it around town. But we sent it to a bunch of labels. I think we sent it to like 40 record labels, trying to find anyone who would be interested in putting it out, or you know, putting out an album. Um, and we got ignored by most, maybe a dozen rejection letters, and Hydrahead were the only label that came back that were interested in working together, which we could not possibly believe because we were such huge fans of the label. And for you to even say something like that we are part of it, that trajectory of music is almost unfathomable because of how largely that label played already a place in our hearts.
Yeah, I mean, Hydrahead Records changed a lot of things and opened the path for a new generation of bands. So definitely it's very, very important. And talking about Hydrahead, one of my favorite records is Australasia. So I want to ask you if you remember how was the composition process and the recording process of this album, if there is any philosophy or topics behind it.
I think, I mean, that was just a period of musical growth and discovery for us because after the after the demo, um, I know I personally had always been really interested in melodic music. As you may have gathered from the many influences I mentioned at the top of this conversation, like melody has always been really a central part of my listening diet and just how I express myself musically. So, in the early days, most of the song ideas would come from Laurent. And I do remember when he started bringing in songs that had major, uh, you know, major key chords in them. I grappled onto them immediately, and I was like, "This is something that's very interesting to me. This combination of heaviness and melody." And so we got a lot more fixated on those types of expressions. But I think also just like the writing for that album was very fast. We were just very inspired at that time, and the recording too. We just didn't have very much money, so so I think we recorded it in like 4 days or something like that. Um, and that was our demo was the first time we worked with Sanford Parker, and the album was the second time we worked with him. So it was just like that too was just like a burgeoning relationship that was really creatively inspiring.
That's awesome, and probably at that time you have any clue that you will change everything for many many people later. And I'm curious because, as I say, Pelican is an instrumental band, so everybody have a different interpretation of the songs. And from my perspective, you can transform the rage or the sadness into something beautiful through the music. And with your songs, it's like that for me. So when you are composing, do you ever imagine how the fans might interpret those songs, or it's more of a personal expression that we all interpret on our own way?
Um, I have to be honest, we don't really think about how the music is going to be perceived by anyone when we're working on it. And maybe that's what sets us apart from hardcore bands, because I know that when I was really invested in hardcore, there was a lot more conversations about where the mosh part goes and stuff like that. Whereas in Pelican, it's really just like finding a thread and then following it where it seems like it wants to go. I think our songs tell a story, but in a way it's more like the songs are telling a story to us and we're just sort of channeling it in a way. Um, I think a lot of our writing process is very intuitive and not deliberate. So we might have one or two ideas that we start with, and then we just sort of chase them and see like, well, where does this want to go? And we, we'll listen to a riff and listen for where it suggests where the path heads next, if that makes any sense. Um, and I think like in a sense, like the songs reveal themselves to us emotionally more than we're chasing after a specific meaning or anything like that.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, for me, I mean, that's the idea. As I say, you can transform your music, the emotions. And I told with the like 2 days ago with Mike from Job about how is the role of the music in the society. So music can be like a medicine for a lot of people, but mostly of the people, and you can transform even pain or rage and in something beautiful. So for me, that's my interpretation of the Pelican's music. So, but it's curious how your idea of the interpretation of the song is probably different than the others.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like, and I think that's part of the beauty of music writ large is that it means such a different thing to different people. Um, it's yeah. I mean, there's so much interpretation that goes into art, and I think that leaving our music instrumental has really left it open for people to make it their own.
Yeah, definitely. And well, you are very well known because you are the masters of the different gears, kind of gears. So you know exactly how to play what kind of amp, cabs, pedals. So I would love if you can explain in your right words you set up to play on live shows. I know if you use any specific boutique pedals, cabs, or amps. I know you use the Model T for some. But I'm don't know if you can explain those in general words your setup.
Um, I will be honest, I'm not like the most gear inclined musician. I feel like I'm more lucky than deliberate in that sense. My current rig is the same Gibson SG that I've been playing for a very long time. I think it's a 72. And I have a moderate number of pedals. I use a volume pedal. I use the Earthquaker Palisades for distortion. I have a Strymon reverb pedal and a TC Electronic Nova delay and an Earthquaker after, no, not afterneath, Avalanche run. So just like a couple reverbs, a couple delays. I've got that Palisades that does a variety of different distortion settings. And yeah, lately I've been running it into a Sun Model T and whatever 4x12 cab I can get my hands on at the time. The one I have at home is an Emperor 4x12.
Emperor is a really amazing brand. My brother build caps actually. He's probably one of
Mhm.
the only guys who build caps here in Mexico. So he's a big fan of Emperor actually. That's pretty cool. And well, I would love to ask you more like a personal question. So I would try to read it in a proper way. And it said, the world feels like it's going through dark times. In your day-to-day life, what actions or values help you to stay grounded and live more peacefully? Can be like a spend time with your family, love, be a volunteer, meditation, etc. Think for yourself, something that help you.
Um, Listening to music always helps. Um, but also just I think like the main thing is that I try to do is just try to extend compassion to as many people as much as I can. I think a key to me this year, um, and I can't do it much because of my job requires me to be online. But I'm trying to be less on social media. I think that the way social media operates, specifically the algorithms that drive it, uh, tends to favor content that enrages people or excites their emotions in an unhealthy way. And I think that it's proving to be very divisive. I think young people have caught on to this much faster than my generation have because a lot of the people my son's age and younger don't use social media at all. Um, so I think our as a society, our world is going to have to learn how to be less online all the time because it brings out the worst in people. And once you start seeing the world through that filter, it becomes very hard to turn it off.
You have a really good point here. I mean, same with my generation. I'm 35, so I discover social medias when they start, the hi-fi, MySpace, Metroflog, etc. But suddenly when Facebook, Instagram appears, everything changed. I mean, even your bank account is linked to all these things, all your life is linked to all this media stuff. So there is a lot of fake news, fake information, that the algorithm is really strange because they hear you, and they want try to
Mhm.
give you something that you like it because they want you to spend time there, and you don't have the connection with your loved ones. I mean, you have your kids or your parents or your wife in the same room, but everybody is in the cell phones, and it's like you should talk, you should go out and just walk or say something, So you have a really good point here, and yeah, definitely social media start like as something very good, but at this point it's something evil. So let's just show you.
It's so interesting. I thought that it was so good for so long because like you'd see like social uprisings start on social media, then transfer over to the real world and like real social change happen through that. But I also think that that's not the goal of social media. And I think that a lot of these companies are starting to tamp down on that type of thing because they're all now, I think things were much different when our feeds were chronological. I think the algorithm has so much to do with the algorithmic feed has so much to do with the way people process information now. It's not healthy.
Yeah. It was really cool at the beginning because you can connect with people from different bands. For example, with your favorite bands. I mean, I had the chance to send you a message and you replying like, "Oh, so I feel I talked with the guys of Pelican, or I discovered this band, and I can talk with friends from I don't know from Japan, from the Netherlands." But in these days, you don't have the chance to talk directly with your friends anymore. You can see why they post the things that they post, and so yeah, it's really weird times. So yeah, the social media, great advice. I'm with you. Well, you will visit Mexico for the first time. We a lot of fans wait for many years for you. So, how do you feel? What are your expectation for this the first time here?
We don't know what to expect. We've seen so many comments and heard from so many people over the years asking us to come. So we're hoping that we're hoping for the best, but we're I don't know. We don't know what to expect. We're just really thrilled for whoever is there that wants to see us, that we get to play for them is very exciting because we know that there has been demand.
Yeah, expect amazing food, maybe some beers, mezcal if you drink, tons of love for people who wait for you, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I'm curious. The scene in Chicago is really unique. I mean, the guys of Resin, for example, Bon Reaper, so looks like a big community. Can you explain us how's the scene in Chicago? I'm very curious about the Chicago scene.
I think because in one of the we're not in one of the coastal cities like New York or LA. There's a sense to Chicago that feels very insulated from the music industry way of doing things. So I think everything here is very humble and homegrown, and everybody has a very strong work ethic. And everybody, like, I feel like there's less of a sense of competition in a scene like Chicago than there is maybe in some of those bigger cities, because everybody is really just interested in what everyone else is doing and how they can contribute, and um, how we can all interact and play with one another.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. And I have the opportunity to know more your scene thanks to the guys who are present because we
Oh yeah.
release a collaboration with them. So really lovely guys. So
Yeah, they're super sweet. We got to play with them a couple times in Europe last summer.
nice. Well, any final words for your fans in Mexico and Latin America?
We are so excited to get to play for you guys, and we can't wait. We just can't wait to be there. We're so excited. Hey, this is Trevor from Pelican, and you're listening to Doomed and Stoned Latin America.